I'm just going to start this meeting just by saying thank you all for being here at 6 for our first budget workshop. And I'm going to turn it directly over to Business Administrator Freeman so we can get started.
Thank you, Councilman. Jerry, if you could share the screen and we will get rolling. Great. Next slide.
You got it. Everyone can see clearly. I just want to make sure. Okay.
Yep. So our breakdown, the Department of Administration, and for this year's purpose, we're also just going to include the Department of Revenue and Finance. So in the Department of Administration, we have the Mayor's Office, the Business Administrator's Office, IT Department, Personnel and Health Benefits, Engineering, Constituent Services, Purchasing, Uniform Construction Code, Municipal Court, the Municipal Clerk, and then within Revenue and Finance, we have both tax collections and the tax assessor. Next slide, Jerry. Thank you. This is an org chart for the Department of Administration. So you have the Business Administrator's Office, you have the Assistant BA and Corporation Counsel alongside, and then below them is Construction Code, Personnel and Benefits, Engineering, IT, Purchasing, Constituent Services, and then an offshoot of the BA's office as well is the Municipal Court and City Clerk.
Jason, can I just a quick question? Do those people all report into Caleb? All the ones that fall under assistant?
No. We also then this year, we're working on trying to get a cleaner part of the website as part of knowing who is in every department. So we're slowly coming along to updating who falls under what staff person's under every department. So I'm not going to go through each one, but this will be public afterward. After this presentation, you can see all the different staff that fall under the administration and what exactly their position title are. Jerry, next slide. For the finance department, you have the director's office, and then the offshoot of the director's office is payroll, tax assessor, and the tax collector. Next slide, Jerry. And the same thing we've broken down for the finance department, the director's office, the tax collector's office, tax assessor, and payroll for each title and individual who works out of that title. For this year, we've kind of put together what the headcount changes are. So we hired 2 new social workers that started earlier in the year. We have a new civil engineer trainee is the civil service title, that individual starting at the end of March. We had some turnover in HPU, and we still have not filled the finance director role. And as I mentioned last night in the budget introduction presentation, we are working on kind of restructuring parts of the finance department, and we've been pushing and moving more towards data and analytics approach to kind of how we budget going forward. And this is going to touch on kind of everything citywide. So we have someone starting in mid-April who will be the head of the city's data and analytics. We had the retirement of a clerk in the engineering office, and that's where that civil engineer trainee is replacing that person. And then out of the construction code office, we would like to add an assistant construction code official. It's one of the busiest offices in City Hall, and I think post-COVID, we're seeing a lot of people are looking to move in the direction of doing more work and more projects in the city. And if you come into City Hall every day, you'll see the number of appointments that are scheduled through that office, and having another person who can sign off on these plans is going to be very helpful in moving that process along. Next slide, Jerry. So this is a breakdown of the Department of Administration. The full budget includes salary and OE. So as I mentioned, I'll just touch on a few of the larger line items. In the construction office, that encompasses a new staff member and the move of another employee from part-time to full-time. Building security, excuse me. We have added additional monies there we have all of our buildings open. We're post-COVID. We have a lot more events that require security. So we've added more money into that line. The Department of Emergency Management, Director Ferranti, next week will touch on that more specifically. Obviously, with the hiring of 2 new social workers, increase overall on the constituent services line. And then in the city engineers line, with the added work related to a lot of the water mains and the upgrades and leak detection, there was a jump in OE in the city engineers line. Next slide, Jared. This is just a breakdown for just salary and wages. Again, a majority of this is really based in the contracts that were passed and the contractual obligations to increase those. A few of the larger lines, again, is the line of constituent services. Purchasing saw 2 promotions, so we saw a little bump there. And then, as I mentioned, both building security and emergency management increased as well. And then the construction office, just again for salary and wages, is related to the positions I mentioned earlier. Next slide, Jared. When it comes to OE, again, we are very, very, I would say, prudent in how we spend our money when it comes to operating expenses and other expenses in the city. So we saw a drop in revenue and finance, a drop in the mayor's office, and a drop in the VA line for money that we're trying to spend. In the IT line, you'll see an increase. That's really twofold. One, the cost of all of our programming, our software stuff just gets more expensive, the licenses, things like that year over year. And then, as I mentioned, in the city engineers line, that's an increase of $83,000 related to a lot of the work that goes on citywide. Derek? Okay. Cool. I touched on this last night, and I don't know if I have to go through it again. It's the same slide as that part. One of the parts of my department, along with personnel, and Councilman Russo serves on the self-insurance fund. So halfway through 2022, we made a change to a mirrored plan of the state health benefits plan. We remain self-insured. Making that change saved us about $800,000 this year. If we were not to change our benefit structure at all last year, and we remained the one we had the same, it was going to end up costing us about $5 million more this year. So this is a really positive change, both for the employees, because their Chapter 78 contributions went down while we maintained a level of benefits, but also it's going to save the taxpayer a tremendous amount of money.
Jason, can you touch on the reference to the NHSA?
Yeah, they pay their own. So there's insurance benefits for NHSA members as well as the library. So they pay us back the cost of the insurance for their employees. So that's what both for the that are in brackets and the library and HSA portions are all in brackets. That's money that comes back to the city. So if you look in the middle section that says total, that's the total cost for our group health. And then minus the employee contributions minus $766,000 from the library and HSA. And that's how we get the total cost of $20 million or just under $21 million.
And that, for some reason, I don't think I remember seeing the NHSA in the past. It's just my own oversight. Is that, and that's dollar for dollar? That's like, you know, $30,000 or something like that per person or whatever.
And both the library and NHSA pay the city back the full freight of that cost. And I think it's actually, and Councilman Russo, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think it's a conversation we're having with other entities in the city, because I think we have structured a really good plan for employees and for taxpayers that is both, again, good for benefits and good for the taxpayer in terms of saving money related to what we're seeing in other municipalities in terms of increased costs. So I think that's something we're going to look at to see if maybe the library and the NHSA are not the only two entities in the city that would be government that would move on to potentially the city's insurance plan.
And can you talk just a little bit about why it's up, you know, 10%, I guess, effectively, almost $2 million?
Sure. So the 5 of our 6 collective bargaining units are mirrored identical to the state health insurance plan. And so all of the contributions are the same. The benefits are exactly the same. The process that needs to go through to get approvals, things like that, are the same. And the state health benefits plan in the mirrored plan, or sorry, the plan that we have mirrored on the state side that's fully insured went up about 24% this year. Being that we're just mirrored and we're self-insured, the piece that went up is obviously the cost of insurance, and we have to kind of match those benefits, but it would have gone up substantially more if we were fully insured. At the same time, the one bargaining unit that is not in that mirrored plan, they went up the requisite, I want to say about 7%, which is kind of industry standard for increase year over year on insurance.
But is there, thanks for that, but like what's the key driver behind in just general increases? Just cost of healthcare, more people are ill? Like
the determination that the state made, I can't speak directly to their rationale. I do know that they were for a long time trying very hard to generate business into the state health insurance plan, and therefore they were artificially lowering their premiums and the costs of those benefits. I don't think that was sustainable. And I think when we were having conversations a few years ago about whether we should move to the state health insurance plan or different options to do that, one of the big concerns that I know the administration had was knowing that at some point it was likely that the state's plan as it was fully insured could potentially explode in terms of cost. And I think a lot of people saw that this past year, which is why the state has made certain determinations when it comes to what's in cap and what's out of cap to try to help offset some communities who are dealing with some really skyrocketing costs.
Okay.
This again, the same slide from last night as it relates to pension. Not a whole lot more to add to this other than the column on the left, our PERS is just public employees. That's gone up about 10% in the last 5 years. On the flip side, the public safety for police and fire, we've seen a 33% increase over the last 5 years, which is, it's been challenging to kind of keep up with that, with the growth of that pension plan. Simultaneously, as I mentioned last night, in years past, we've had to include the pension increase in our inside our cap. This year, the state of New Jersey is allowing all municipalities to, for one time only that we know of, allowing your pension obligation to not count towards your appropriations cap. So I know we mentioned that last night, but just to reiterate that again. Sure. And then I know Councilman Giattino requested a breakdown of American Rescue Plan spending and where we are with that. The city was, in 2021, the city was awarded $26.1 million. The breakdown of that spending in 2021, $6.4 million was used for revenue replacement. $1.8 million was used in small business grants. $150,000 was used for rental relief programs. $215,000 was used in nonprofit funding. $500,000 was used for COVID response. About $500,000 was appropriated for a micro transit program that is in the works. $285,000 was used to expand EV charging. $135,000 was used citywide for IT upgrades. $90,000 was used for Hurricane Ida recovery. $80,000 was used for the health department build out, which is happening at the multi-service center. And $600,000 was used for the planning, designing, and execution of the flood barricade program that you'll be seeing coming this fall. In 2022, $4.2 million was used in revenue replacement. $1.5 million was used for the Midtown Garage. $300,000 was used to start the HPU online program and to update all of our online online HPU programs. $700,000 was used for leak detection sensors. $500,000 was used for water meter readers. Those are pressure sensors in the water system. We added, we're in the process of creating, and what we'll be rolling out soon is a lead service program to incentivize residents with investments from the city to replace any lead services. As you know, that there's a kind of an unfunded mandate from the state of New Jersey that in 10 years, that started about a year and a half ago, every community must replace all of their lead service lines. So we'll be rolling out a program, hopefully in the next few weeks, to incentivize residents from doing that. And then in 2023, the only big ticket number that is currently earmarked for spending is $1.7 million for revenue replacement that's being introduced in the 2023 budget. And obviously ARP funds are diminishing revenue. It has to be appropriated by 2024 and spent by 2026. And the intent from the administration was obviously to meet our needs when it came to revenue replacement in the budget to offset any concerns with taxes and spending and things like that. But the reality is, because it is a depreciating asset, to try to lower it by half every year so that we are no longer relying on it and it does not become something that we are kind of missing as a gap in our budget. So that is the American Rescue Plan recap.
Jason,
Yes.
could you send us that actual breakdown?
Sure.
And then my other question to you, when you say revenue replacement, do you mind going back one? When you say
Yeah.
2023 revenue replacement, $1.7 million, what revenue was that? Is that in your breakdown?
It is in the breakdown, and it's part of the as kind of the parameters for using ARP funds allows you to use it for revenue replacement if things are down. So I do have that breakdown. It's in the budget itself, and I can send that as a part of the overall picture to the entire council.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Director. Jen,
So,
since you're there,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Jen, since you started, are there any other questions? That's your last slide, right, Director?
Yes.
Oh, can you go back to other expenses?
What was slide 14?
Go back to 14.
No,
Questions.
no,
Do you have any
Yeah.
questions? It's so hard to see this. It's so teeny.
Let's see if I can make it.
So
big.
revenue and finance, it says it's $20,000 less. Is that for this year's $20,000 less? Oh, you're making it bigger.
Making it bigger. Better?
Oh, so much better. And I'm even wearing glasses.
How's that?
Perfect.
Oops, sorry.
So revenue and finance, it says you're down 20 grand, right? It's $20,000 less.
Yeah, we're not down. We're just appropriating
Yeah.
less money.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's $20,000 less. What's the reason for that?
Last year, we only charged $53,000 to it. And when we make updates to the tax maps and different adjustments that are made throughout the city, things like that, we have to spend the money from that line. We only used $53,000 last year. We still anticipate having to use more than that this year, but not as much as what was originally adopted in last year's budget.
And from what you did last year, what are you anticipating extra this year to do?
I wouldn't say it's extra. It's just in previous years, like on the last agenda, there was a $20,000. We had to update our tax maps. That cost $20,000. We didn't have to do that the previous year. So like that right off the bat is something that we anticipate being different. So that's really right off the top of my head, that's what it is.
Mhm.
But this number has been pretty stagnant. And like last year, I think when Chris Baldwin and I kind of went through this, we realized that we can lower it.
Great. And then I don't really care about that one. What does that say? The city engineer, did you say you were adding some? No, it wouldn't be a person. Why is the city engineer going up 83?
I mean, I think a lot, you've seen the work that office is producing citywide, and with the added work we're doing with our water system, the work that we're doing across the board in pedestrian safety and things like that. we're just we're doing more projects and spending more money that I think are benefiting the community. So last year we adopted a budget of 262,000. We spent right up to that dollar amount. And in speaking with Olga, she thinks it would be better for her department and better for the city to add to that OE line.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
My question was, is there a page 14?
It
stopped
just
on
said, do you have
13.
any questions?
Oh, got it. Are you able to provide schedules separately since they're not here, with like interest expense and projected interest expense and debt service and our debt balances and surplus and ratables? Do you know what the
Sure.
ratable change was this year?
I didn't hear the last part. I'm sorry.
Do you know what the ratable change was this year?
I can get all that for you. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I can provide that all to the city council.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else, Tiffany?
Mm-mm.
Any other council members?
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, council.
Thanks.
Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
Good night.
Did we want to ask
Thanks,
public?
Jason.
Is
Or
there
no,
anyone
this is
on?
just presentation.
What's that?
Yep. Do we have
wouldn't-
any questions from the public?
I don't think there's anyone from the public on.
I think
We
there's
have
about
four
34
attendees.
people. Yeah.
Wait,
You have to tell,
Oh, I
if
see.
anyone from the public wants to speak, you need to raise your hand.
They raise their hand. So Michael, if you would make that.
I just
announcement,
scared, I just made someone from the public leave by saying that.
Yes, you did. You scared them off. I don't see anyone, so I'll give them one more second to change their mind. Anyone from the public want to speak or ask questions? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll go to the next presentation.
Great, thank you. That would be my budget, Corporation Counsel. Jerry, if you can pull that up, I'd greatly appreciate it.
You got it.
Can I just make Jerry, if you got rid of the rest of the stuff on your screen and make this your full screen, it will show better.
just hit F5. Yeah, or hit F5, either way.
For some reason, for me, when I go full screen mode, okay, good.
Great, so that's perfect. So this is the organizational chart. Many of you are familiar with it. Corporation Counsel would be me. We have two assistant corporation counsels. Alyssa, who is my right hand and my left hand. And then we have Andrew, who's new to the office, who does all of our prosecuting work. So we'll go over that later. And then we have one legal secretary you all know as Anna. Next slide. You can see we've generally stayed at 4 employees, which would be 3 attorneys. Our support staff has always been 1 legal secretary. So that's stayed relatively consistent. Back in 2021, for a short period of time, we did have 5 people. I pretty much say it every year that we're here. If we can get up to and maintain that 5 level, I think that we could possibly save additional costs by reducing work performed by outside attorneys. And as you can see, these are some of the goals we have, and the 2 center goals are some of the main goals, which is to continue to manage and control legal costs. Not only are we here to perform all the legal work and protect the city and answer lawsuits and avoid them and do the proper training for employees and whatnot, but we're also here to maintain those legal costs when they go to outside attorneys and reduce the cost the best possibly can with our team by reducing the work performed by outside attorneys. Next slide, please. These next couple of slides will list what we do. City clerk, a lot of the time with the city clerk is sent on OPA requests. The city's clerk's office, I'm not sure how accurate, I think it was the same number we used last year, but they receive thousands. 2,500 might be a good estimate of how many OPA requests they use a year that they respond to. Purchasing, we deal with the RFPs and RFQs and pay to play. Next slide, please. Construction code office, we deal with construction code issues. Anytime Mario and his team have questions or they run into a difficult area, they give us a call. Tax office, again, we do tax sales. We also help sometimes when there's questions with regard to any tax appeals, even though we have separate counsel for that. General litigation, we handle some in-house. We also work with the attorneys, whether the JIF attorneys or if it's a non-covered JIF claim. We not only work with them, we monitor all the bills and everything that's going on. And we help with the strategy going forward. Contracts, we actually draft all the contracts that are approved by the city council. And as you may or may not know, that's approximately 250 contracts a year. Next slide. And then with regard to all employees, we do the negotiations for all the collective bargaining agreements. We do the disciplinary hearings, grievances, arbitrations. Very rarely do we have help with that from outside attorneys. We try to do all that in-house, but every so often there's a very large investigation that would pull us from our normal day-to-day work of in preparing all of your resolutions, ordinances, and dealing with normal employee issues and legal issues as they arrive. So every so often we do hand some of that stuff to outside counsel. Next slide. Again, pay-to-play compliance. Anytime you pass a contract, we have to review and make sure that there's compliance. We also review the elect reports filed by candidates trying to make sure that your ordinance is enforced. Next slide. Management administration. Again, we manage our legal budget. We attend your council meetings, as you know. We do resolutions and ordinances. We also handle all the affirmative action complaints that come to the office. Next slide. And here's where we get down to the fun part. The good news is we're able to reduce our budget. Now, last year, these numbers are somewhat deceiving. Last year, we actually used $400,000 approximately in ARP funding. And that was used based upon the impact to Corporation Counsel's office, everything from the prosecutors on up. But you can see our salary and wages have gone down by $53,000. Part of that savings is because while we had one person come out, I'll call it more senior, and we have another person come in that is handling just the prosecutor, there was a savings there that impacted our budget. You could see outside counsel, that's dropped $330,000. Again, some of that money was the additional money we had from ARP. I was going to say that wrong. And because you've settled the hospital litigation, we think we're comfortable in coming back to that number. And if you look over the years, which will be, don't turn that there, but you'll see the next slide. We're kind of coming down to around where I'm comfortable maintaining our budget, which is around $1 million, slightly more than that, which is really our lowest number since I've been Corporation Counsel, based upon the expenditures and all the different things that we do here. We've lowered the outside expenditures for Westlaw by $1,000. And you can see the municipal prosecutors dropped by $80,000. So between the municipal prosecutor and the salary and wages, you can see we've saved about, estimating $135,000. And that again is because we use the outside prosecutors. Prosecuting changed during COVID, where the people are no longer really coming into court, except for like DWI trials and some other big events. A lot of this is done online, makes it much more harder in the old days, they used to just line up. Nowadays, we try and call them in advance or whatnot. So having Andrew as our newest addition to our office, and he does a fantastic job and basically handles municipal prosecution almost solely is his full-time job. The reason why we have $20,000 remaining in the introduced budget for municipal prosecutors is Andrew, of course, is entitled to be sick on occasion and take a vacation now and then. So that covers the prosecutors, and the same prosecutors we used to have agreed to stay on board as our cover prosecutors. So it works out really well that way. Next slide. And go back one. There you go. And you can see budgeted in the last, go back. There you go. Perfect. Slide 12. You can see budgeted over the last bunch of years. When I started, you were at $1,400,000. Not sure why it was budgeted that high, but it was. And then we ended up in 2017. I'll call it my first full year of appointment at that $922,000. And then consistently, it's been in that $1 million era, with the exception of last year, where it was a high year. But I think there are reasons for that. And I'm comfortable going back down to almost the lowest number since 2019, which is $1,050,000. Next slide. And this is just a pie chart, kind of shows you where the money goes between salary and wages, special counsel, hearing officers and stuff like that. And then the municipal prosecutors have dropped down significantly at 1.3% based upon the fact that we're handling that in-house now. And then there's one more slide. What's changed? The only thing that really has changed in my corporation counsel to handle the municipal court on a full-time basis, but also, as you know, we lost a assistant corporation counsel that moved on to other things. So while we placed one, the one who left did not do the municipal prosecutor on a full-time when he left. So we're kind of down a guy in-house, but we replaced the municipal prosecutors. But I think for budgetary purposes, it worked out really well. And I guess that's the end of the presentation. If anyone has any questions.
Any council members?
Not for me, thanks, Ben.
I'm good. No,
Wonderful.
thanks.
Corporation Counsel, I just have one question.
Sure.
Are there any specific items in the foreseeable future that you would anticipate any large increase or a surprise, so to speak, throughout the year?
No, currently right now, no. I mean, the council is fully aware of all the different pieces of litigation and different land use. Sometimes the land use things, we spend a lot on outside counsel for that. That comes through my office in some instances. But there's no big surprise. There's nothing on the horizon that leads me to believe that we can't stay within the budget that is being introduced to you today. I don't think
Okay,
we can,
great.
I also don't think we can cut the budget, but with the $1,050,000. But I'm very comfortable with the fact that we can handle a couple of surprises and still come within the budget, because we always have surprises every year, but there's nothing on the
Right.
horizon.
Sure. And then the other question I had is from a outside counsel perspective, are there any specific outliers that we have as far as one firm or another that is really not within the range of what we typically see for municipal work?
You said it's not in the range. No, everybody, I believe all of our outside counsel actually, quite frankly, do a great job. And they all, we review all the bills, all the invoices. So everything that I see is appropriate for the work that they're doing, the amount of work, the type of project that's been assigned them. Everybody is where they should be.
Okay, great. That's all I had. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak? Ask any questions?
Paul's hands up and Manny's hands up.
Jerry, could you let Paul in?
Sure.
I've done it. Paul, you're in. You're allowed
Yeah.
to speak. Say your
Thank you.
name, please.
Good. Paul Presenzano. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Loya. Can you go back to the page of all your the good job you did, the positive page of what you spent? Yeah, this go
This
back, Jared, a little more. Next one.
Or this
That one. That's
Okay.
the good one. So you mentioned earlier in your presentation that if you had another head count, you could substantially save some money, I believe you said, which is always a positive. If you had and I won't hold you to it. I mean, it's just a guess right now. If you had that extra head count, how much could you save in your department by adding that other person?
Well, using round numbers, just again, very round numbers, right? I like round numbers. Let's
Mhm.
pretend a new attorney costs $100,000. I think that attorney could probably do $250,000, $200,000 worth of work. So you're talking about saving between $100,000 and $150,000.
Okay, so that 1050 you have.
So your
would drop-
salaries go up,
Yeah.
and then your budgeted money can go down.
Okay,
But the budgeted money is not going to go down as much as, you know what I mean? Like, so you have to cover the salary, right? So I think
Yes.
an attorney, generally speaking, can save, at this point, there's still enough work that we'd be able to hold in-house for an attorney that would save the city another $100,000.
one question, that 100K, would that include benefits or that does not include benefits?
Well, we're using round numbers, right? So normally when we hire a new attorney, they don't start at $100,000.
Okay,
So that, that's not where we usually start attorneys. So,
Okay.
But with benefits, it's somewhere in that area. I'd have to get financing here, but 110,
Okay.
115 with benefits, 120.
could they go above 250 or 200 to, I mean, could they make or save 300, 400, or is it just kind of, that's where you kind of cap at 250?
Well, see, it's somewhat artificial, right? Because it depends on what we do with another attorneys. You hold stuff inside instead of giving it to outside attorneys. So now I have to look at what the rate is. So different attorneys, depending what they're working on, have different rates. So if you
Okay.
apply a $175,000 rate to the in-house attorney, bear with me, I'll actually do math for you. I can say it out loud. So if you did a 175, the normal attorneys are going to work 2080, it's $364,000 of work that would have gone outside that now stays inside. So now you're going to subtract their salary from that, right? But that's at the 175,000 or $175 an hour number.
Okay.
If you pretend that it's given to an attorney who's making $200 an hour, that number changes. But that's kind of how I get the number of $150,000, because the quick math is 2080 is what a normal person works. $175 an hour is $364,000. You subtract $100,000, you're left with that $250,000,
Okay.
$200,000 somewhere in that area.
And one last question, and then I'm done. How quick would it be to find someone? Let's say, God forbid, that there is some lawsuits and things that come up or the increased workload. Is this something that's employees are easily found? Or is this something?
It's
that
actually,
takes
these days, I find it's been difficult to find, experienced attorneys that can come in and hit the ground running and actually do that type of work. You need an experienced attorney only because if you don't have an experienced attorney, you're not actually giving them a file saying, go knock yourself out. You're working with them, so they're slowing you down and they're not going to necessarily have that as large of a savings, but it's relatively, there's attorneys out there, certainly. It's not an impossible task.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for the explanation.
Great. Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
Thanks, Paul. Can we let Manny in, please?
Manny, you're allowed to talk. Go ahead, state your name.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, Corporate Counsel. I appreciate looking at the numbers in the regards to the money allocated and the money spent, which is something you had given me a tutorial last year, and I appreciate it in regards to the attorneys that you hire and the amount you save, pardon me, the amount you allocate, and then how you then partial it out. That is good. And the members of the public, I'm sure, it's good to see that. So I wanted just to express my thank yous on that. But to follow up on Paul's question, so when we, like you just said, when we need a attorney for anything major, so you go first to the top tier persons, I guess is what I want to ask. How do you do that again, please?
So every year what we do is we go out to bid for different groups of attorneys. So we
Yes.
have labor attorneys, land use attorneys, litigation defense attorneys.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
So there's all different types of attorneys. And then depending on the type of attorney, they're pre-qualified. And I say depending on the type, like for instance, tax appeal attorney, we really only appoint one, and because that's what makes sense in that particular field. But lots of the other attorneys, like labor attorneys, litigation defense attorneys, land use attorneys, we pre-qualify, the council pre-qualifies many of them. And then as issues come up, we take a look at all the people who responded and are pre-qualified, and we say, oh, we think this firm will be a good fit for this particular thing because of our experience with them in the past, or we know a particular attorney there has had a case similar or has performed well in the past. And so that's how we do that. We look at the groups of attorney who responded, who got pre-qualified by the council, and then we usually pick from those attorneys. And then there are occasions actually when we go out because we look at whoever's around, or it's a special case where we think somebody else, in the world has some special knowledge or relationships that can help us out and represent the city, in a more favorable light than the rest of us can.
Perfect. That's what I mean. So when in the council agendas, it shows up that you're hiring X attorney or Y attorney for not to exceed, we already, you already have this in this budget that you just presented. You're just saying possibly we are going to use, let's say for a number, you like round numbers, so $10,000. We have these $10,000, is not to exceed this. But if the attorney has to do a little bit extra, then you still have 20 on the side, so you can take another 5 and pay it into this attorney. Is that how that works, right, sir?
Yeah, that's kind of how it works. So you can see the
Right.
budgeted amount this year is $1,050,000. So I
Mhm.
know I can't spend more than that. So my job is to keep that as low as possible, right? I wish I didn't have to spend any of it. But when we go for land use issues, litigation issues, labor issues, whatever the issues are, as I assign attorneys, those numbers start to drop. So I have to manage the budget. And as you've indicated, and just so everyone understands what you were talking about before, you had asked me a question during one of the council meetings or afterwards, we had a nice conversation where why does it seem like I constantly come back with the same attorneys saying, oh, let's increase it, let's increase it, let's increase it. That's something that the council has requested that I do. And quite frankly, since being corporation counsel, I actually like it. It controls the budget. It allows the council and the public to keep an eye on the budget, and also kind of keeps the attorneys in check. They're not just given $100,000 budget and saying, okay, go do your thing, and they think they can go crazy. We're constantly monitoring every single invoice that's sent. And then when they get to the certain point, like, they've spent the $10,000 that we allocated, we give them another 10, and then we continue to watch it and make sure that, things are in control.
Perfect. See, that is a good explanation, and that's what I wanted the members of the public to hear from you, sir. So one last question, and it is better in your opinion as well, because you need sometimes special attorneys, like you said, to hand them something here and knock yourself out. Better to have that flexibility than have attorneys hired in your office. Let's say have 2 more attorneys, and yet they're not specialized in then something that comes up in the city. So that's why it's better to contract it out.
Yeah.
That's my
So
last question.
the part of the issues with litigation is you can't control the timing of it, right? So my office not only does the legal stuff, but we have to write all the resolutions, all the ordinances, prepare for all the council meetings. And there's a significant amount of time to do that, as well as just day-to-day employee questions, things of that nature. So when you're taking, a big event in the city of Hoboken, whether it be a land use issue, out on the waterfront, you're taking a piece of property, you have a large piece of litigation. A lot of times a significant amount of time needs to be spent on that litigation right away. So the benefit of having a firm is they'll have 4, 5, 6 attorneys working on that, for the week or for that month. And then that issue goes away. So it's hard to actually, for lack of a better word, have a law firm with inside the city of Hoboken. You can do it. And some of our surrounding cities, Jersey City has a very large law firm that is our legal counsel in-house, as well as Newark. But what Hoboken has done, which I think is more beneficial to the city, is we have a smaller law department, and then we outsource to certain specialties. But our large law department also saves us money, because if we weren't there, you'd have to outsource all of this, right? We just experienced it with the prosecutors, where the prosecuting started to get out of control with the outside attorneys, because we did have it in-house at one point in time, and then it went out for a bunch of different reasons, employee turnover and whatnot. So when we bring it back in, we save money. We actually get a better quality product, quite frankly, because now we have a full-time prosecutor handling everything. Well, it's the same thing with us. While I said to the last member of the public that if I hired somebody else that we could save money, that doesn't work continually forever, because eventually there's going to be an issue where you're going to have outside attorneys anyway, because you don't have that group of people. You're not 50 attorneys in an office. So when there's a large issue that needs immediate attention for whatever reason, an emergent application or whatnot, you don't have the staff to do it. You'll still only be 6 attorneys.
Yeah, that would make sense to rather have a firm that has their 10 working, and we're paying them a certain amount, let them 10 knock out. It makes sense in that aspect. But I appreciate the information and the savings. I hope all the other departments come in like you, saving us some money, and I appreciate it. And I hope we save more. I hope you're able to even save some of that million. But
As do I.
I want to appreciate everyone and for this presentation. And I think is Mr. Chair, yes. that I'm supposed to
Yes.
thank? Yeah, Mr. Chair. thank you
Always,
so
Manny,
much.
always.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and everyone. All right, have a good evening.
Anytime, Manny. I think Manny was the only other public speaker here. Any other council members? Councilwoman Giatino, I know you had your hand up. Was that just, you didn't lower it before?
Yeah, just never lowered.
Yep, not a problem. All
Thank
right,
you.
not a problem then. Let's move on to the next presentation.
Great. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jerry.
You got it.
You're doing it this year, Jer?
I am.
Wow, good.
Oops. How's everyone doing tonight?
Pretty good, Jerry.
My name is Jerry Lore. I'm the Deputy Clerk for the City Clerk's Office. I just want to give you a quick overview of the City Clerk's responsibilities. One of the responsibilities that the City Clerk has is the custodian of the municipal seal. We also attest signatures of municipal officers and officials. I constantly have to attest contracts for the mayor, test the signatures. We are the secretary of the governing body, which consists of the 9 council members, 3 council at large, and the 6 that represent each ward. And every 2 weeks, we prepare the agenda with the directors, administration, and along with the governing body to conduct city business. So we have people from the public for this workshop. Just wanted to enlighten you. A lot of people don't understand the process of resolution and ordinances. So for instance, if someone from the public wanted a bike lane on a street, we would need 2 sponsors from the council members. And if I can get 2 sponsors out of the 9, we present this at the council meeting and then we vote on it. And if there's a majority to vote on it, then it passes and for first reading. And then the next council meeting, they have a second reading where the public is allowed to comment to the governing body, whether they would like it or what they would not like it. So, so that's the agenda preparation. Legal advertising, we do special meetings, advertising for things, budget workshop, that's which we are doing now, requests for qualifications, requests for proposals and bids. Corporation Counsel did mention going through some of these when they're looking for outside counsel, when we're looking for contractors for big time projects throughout the city, and also updating the city's website on a daily basis. Clerk's office also is the chief registrar of voters. We handle all elections. Normally the primary elections in June, and November is the general election. And if, as you all know, we had a special election earlier this year due to referendum, those things are unforeseen. We will work with the county to handle these special elections, or if there's a vacancy. We also have voter registration forms. I had a phone call today of a resident that wanted to fill out a change of party affiliation. You can come to the city clerk's office to fill it out or register to vote. We have a lot of new residents coming into Hoboken. We would invite you to come to the clerk's office to fill out a voter registration form. We also handle OPRA, which stands for the Open Public Records Act. This is found on the city website under the city clerk's page for information for the city. Corporation Counsel did touch base that we average about thousands, 2,500 ballpark of Oprahs that we get. We probably get one of the biggest Oprah requests throughout the state of New Jersey. We have a great staff that handles it, and we work with all departments whenever someone wants to request information. We are also the records coordinator. We are handling moving records to offsite for the city, working with the auditor and the department head when we need to preserve documents for a certain time period. We handle updating the website daily, board worker appointments, city council page, advertisements for RFQs, RFPs, bids. We also update our municipal code whenever there's new legislation, which is the city ordinance that I touched on. We try to bundle it up through certain council meetings, send it to our folks in the code for the public to view, to see what new legislation has passed. So I know that the rent control ordinance that passed in February, a lot of people were inquiring. So we were trying to get that in the municipal code so that the public can see. We continue daily working with the administration and the city council members every 2 weeks to update our council meetings online portal, which is Acela, or which is Granicus took over. We conduct oath of office whenever there's a new appointment being made. I had to conduct an oath of office today for a rent control appointment that was made a couple of meetings ago. We handle miscellaneous licensing, raffles, games of chance, non-food vendors, and the city clerk sometimes conducts marriage ceremonies whenever the municipal judge or the mayor is not available. Here is the org chart of the city clerk's office. You have city clerk Jimmy. We have clerk 2, Michael, Alyssa, and also Mary Beth. I'm sorry, guys. I have to come out. I haven't. Hold on 1 second, folks. I have it to update my slide. 1 second. My apologies, everyone. Sorry. So yes, back to the org chart. Michael, Alyssa, and Mary Beth, who's the record support technician 4. We did not change in our employee staff in the clerk's office. We're staying at 5 compared to last year.
Jerry, can you just say again who the people are?
Yes, absolutely. Let me go back. We have Michael, Alyssa, they're clerk 2s, and then Mary Beth, who is our record support technician 4. And me and Jimmy.
Isn't there a 6th person in there?
There is, but she uses our office space. She works for community development.
Oh, okay. Got you.
Yes. So going back to the Oprahs, we get thousands every year. And currently, as of today, we had 368 Oprah requests so far of the year. Since COVID, the Oprah requests have slowed down, but it has picked up recently. Again, it's very seamless where you can come in and fill out an Oprah form. People do that quite often now that I see. And they also do it online, which makes it easier for the public. We work very closely with Corporation Counsel to receive legal advice on research, drafting legal memorandums. We also coordinate with Corporation Counsel and Special Counsel to represent the city clerk for GRC matters. and it's about 5, I would say, give or take. The city clerk's office works with the municipal boards for the city, and we assist on advertising and also posting the agendas on the city website, the bulletin board outside the city clerk's office, and also advertising annual meetings. And the council members probably get spammed by me by all the agendas that I send out for the boards. When the secretary of each board distributes it to me, I circulate it to the governing body. So the boards consist of the Historic Preservation Commission, Shade Tree Commission, ABC, Alcohol Beverage Control Board, NHSA, North Hudson Sewage Authority, Planning Board, Zoning Board, Housing Authority, Library Board, Rent Leveling Stabilization Board, Hoboken Arts Advisory Council, Hoboken Municipal Hospital Authority, and Cannabis Review Board. The public that are listening, you have, and I invite you all to apply for these boards. They are on the city website under municipal boards. There are vacancies that are coming up for some of these boards that I invite you all to encourage you to apply to get the public involved. This is an overview of our budget for this year. There was an increase of 4.1% from the previous year, but it's due to salary and wages or contractual agreements that were made with the employees. Here is an overview of the budget. I know that council members, as you can see, there has been certain items have reduced. And I know that in the past previous workshops, legal advertising, since COVID we did a lot of advertising, doing a lot of Zoom, but that has now kind of gone down, and we're trying to transition now into more in-person meetings, such as our council meetings, board meetings. Just our next rent control meeting will be in person. They've been doing it Zoom. So the advertising we've been trying to control, and again, we have had a lot of community meetings for projects that go around town, and those things are unforeseen. So we have to let the public know. So codification of ordinances, that also, as you can see, the number has gone down. Our salaries and wages for elections has gone up a little bit, and also along with the city clerk's salary and wages, again due to contractual agreements, and other expenses. We have some technology that we need to upgrade, and we need the council support on possibly getting new printers for the city clerk's office. We actually had an issue last night prior to the council meeting where we had to get the IT involved, because our council agendas, as you all know, is quite big. Our council meetings, I encourage the public to come. We had under 1,000 pages, the agenda packet, which is a lot. And I think the printer that we have need to be upgraded. So that amount of money that I'm asking the council, I would greatly appreciate if we can have our printers upgraded. But I also been asking, and again, I have to work with the governing body and also the administration on trying to go paperless. I know that we are moving in the right direction. I've been an avid proponent on trying to make it easy for the public to access information since I've been working here. I have worked on the website with different administration, but I think that I'm really happy to see the council members have also lessened on the paper, but I would like possibly in discussion again with the council members and also with the administration, if we can figure out a better way of going completely paperless instead of my office printing out almost 1,000 pages, obviously one copy for the council members to sponsor and sign during the council meeting, but that is up to you. That is the end of my presentation. I thank you for your time. And if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Any council members have any questions for Mr. Lohr?
Yes, Council Vice President. Jerry, this is Jim.
Hey, Jim.
Are you, so I assume you're not still printing out, you know, the 900 pages, you know, for many council members? It's
Nope, I'm not. And it is, and it's not, none of you guys requested.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No, I mean, I'm not
So,
trying to
yes.
point
So,
any fingers.
yeah.
I did hear in the past that there was some thought of getting tablets so that.
Yes, there has been discussion. So again, me and the administration, I have brought it up, and also, if you know, you guys, if wanted, you know, if you guys are really thinking about doing it, we all have to be on the same page for this in order for it to work.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm definitely for it. And we're in the right direction. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I used to print out packets years ago to each of the council members, but now, you know, bring your own
yeah,
devices.
stand as accused. But no, I mean, I know a number of council members, you know, bring their own laptops or tablets, and I just, you know, I wonder about uniformity. If, you know, whether if you're using your personal laptop, then if you get an Oprah request, you have to open up your laptop possibly to, you know. Anyway, I'm not necessarily suggesting that 9 tablets be purchased, but I think it might make, you know, it's something to think about anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other
Hey.
council members?
Yeah, Jerry,
Hey, Jen. Yes.
I think there's also a way to like electronically sign. I know there's a way to electronically sign everything. So you probably, and it would probably be easier for you
Absolutely.
if it was done that way.
Yes.
Yeah, we certainly do that, you know, in government, federal
Yeah.
government. So,
That's it.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you very much.
Any members of the public have any questions? I don't see. Go ahead, Manny.
Yes, it is Manny Rivera Soler, the pest from Park Avenue. Good evening again, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask a question to Deputy Clerk. The budget that you have here, what is the increase you say for this year?
Well, under the other expense, I was trying to explain to the governing body that we would like new printers for our office because we do we print out a lot of paper, tons, because we have the agenda packets every 2 weeks, Open Public Records Act requests, Oprah requests, and we get a lot of Oprahs. So we use the printer probably the most, I would say, out of the city. And also anyone that will like from the public to print out an ordinance, or during meetings, council members request hard copies of certain items on the agenda, I have to print them. So
So in this
that's
case,
where.
I'm sorry for cutting you off. So what you're saying in this is your increase is because you are in the very extreme need of printers for the function of the office of city clerk.
Absolutely.
Okay, but you don't foresee that, of course, a trend, obviously,
No,
unless
no,
you
no.
break it
This,
again.
this obviously, no, this is not an annual thing.
Uh-huh.
You know, the printers that we have, they're quite old. I would say at least over 3 to 5 years. So we print out a lot. And as you know, coming to the meetings and seeing the
Yep.
agenda packet online,
Yep.
you know, it's hundreds compared to other municipalities, which is probably smaller.
And would you know that you could perhaps let members of the public or even members of the council know if is there any way that you can tell if you go paperless or if you go with those tablets, what would be the savings versus having to spend, even though you will always need paper copies for some reason or other, but
Absolutely.
what would be an estimate? Would you have it, or you have an idea, or is there any in the works that you could do it in the future? You can tell, hey, council, if we go paperless and tablets, even though that's an investment, the tablets, but we could save in the long run this amount of money in our office for our budget. Is that a possibility? And knowing that, is it not better to have secure laptops or tablets for council members, just for the security of the council members, due to the fact that they receive sensitive information when there's litigation that they need to see, but nobody else needs to see at that point? Do you also see that as a thing that you could also promote as a reason why to have these electronic devices for the council and whomever?
I can't give you a number of savings.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm just no, I know you. I'm saying, do you foresee? Can you get that? Would that be something that your office would be able to say, oh, council, we should do this. This would save us. Maybe not in this budget. I'm saying the next one, or even in this year, if it could be possible. And I'm just putting it out there so you
Yeah.
could have something to negotiate with.
Well, I can tell you, Annie, that when I started almost 15
Mhm.
years ago, you had to come into City Hall for
Everything. Huh?
everything.
Mhm.
And I was involved working with the developer for a whole year, digitizing documents, city documents, so that it made it easier for the public to access the information. So technology takes time. That is my background from Stevens. And it's changed. It also causes change. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. As far as going completely paperless, that is ideal, and it's definitely possible. We got through the pandemic and we had to avoid utilizing paper, but now that we're coming back to normalcy, some people don't have access to printers. People like to see documents, and you mentioned things that are confidential that's only allowed during closed session for the governing body. Sometimes it's more secure for me to give these documents that are confidential to the council, and then once they're done, they give it back to me, and then I shred them. So it is it's a tricky situation, but I think I'm hopeful that through time we will go paperless. It just takes the right technology, and everyone's got to be on board for it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's why I mentioned, and I said you can't go completely paperless, so because of that thing as well. But yeah, and I also appreciate the fact that you mentioned that that there were availabilities to apply for the different boards and commissions. That's always good for members of the public to know and to be able to apply, because it is important to get members of the public and residents in general involved in the city's day to day, which some people don't know that there is this board and that board. As you know, in meetings, I voice it everywhere. So I appreciate that you did that as well tonight.
Thank you.
And well, and I appreciate you. Thank you so very much for your presentation. And Mr. Chair, once again, thank you for allowing me to be able to speak. And that was all I had. Thank you very much. And good evening.
Great,
again.
thanks, Manny.
Can I ask one more question, Michael?
Yeah, by all means, go ahead.
Thank you. Jerry, since I think this would come from your department, when you call 201-420-2070, which in the city directory says it's the city council's phone number, it rings like twice and then makes like a noise like this line doesn't actually exist.
Okay. I'll check with our IT department about that.
Well, I don't, and by the way, I don't know if that's even such a good idea. I don't know how other council members feel, but like a city council number that no one's really monitoring is probably a bad idea. When I think we all pretty much give our cell phones out.
Yeah, which is on your page.
I think they actually we complained about this a few years ago when you set them up initially. I think they got rid of them all for this reason that Jen's raising. I don't think our numbers, I don't know that we have voicemail or our numbers work. They weren't supposed to.
Okay. I can talk to IT about that and look into it.
Maybe you can save money on that one phone line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't
Every
talk to
penny
them.
counts.
Don't talk to them about reestablishing it. Talk to them about getting rid of it, I think, right? Is that what do we agree?
Yeah, no, I'm saying get rid of it.
Yeah, because I mean, on your profile for each bio, you guys all are much comfortable with your cell phones, and I totally get it.
Thanks.
One last thing I want to kind of ask you guys and also the public's help is, as you all know, we have election coming up for the June 6th primary, and we've had some struggle of recruiting new board members. And I know some of you have helped me on recruiting, but I'm asking
Board members or poll workers?
poll workers, Tiffany,
Sorry. Yep.
because
Yeah.
I'm urging not only you and the public, please try to get people to participate in the election, because we have new machines for this year, and the county are also changing. So we're not using the old machine. We're going with the tablets for the board workers, and the pickup. We just had a meeting with the county superintendent of elections and board of elections this week, and they showed us how much equipment that the board members would have to come pick up and also drop off. And it is going to be challenging, and this is challenging for all the clerk's office in the state of, in Hudson County, due to this new ES&S company. So I encourage the public and also council members, if you can reach out to anyone that's interested in participating in the elections for this year, be greatly appreciated for the city clerk.
Jerry, can I ask
That's right. Just a quick question. Just tell me what the requirements are for a poll worker.
They would just
actually, what I was gonna ask differently, similarly, Jerry, can you actually put like a little piece of paper summary, like with the hours, how much they get paid and what's expected, and circulate that with what Jen just asked, because then we have it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I absolutely can. It's a application form. It's 3 different, Mary Beth in my office can help me work that out. But-
And also too, I know at least one poll worker, and I know this isn't why we're supposed to be talking about this now, but one poll worker last time around struggled with actually getting the
Yes.
picking up the things. So maybe
Yes.
there's an opportunity to have people just volunteer to help pick up and deliver in the morning and bring at the end of the day, because there's probably plenty of people with cars that would zip around and be able to help with something like that.
I don't
Yes.
think someone who's not a poll worker should be touching anything.
No, they still, no,
Say
just so we're clear, they still have to, be like credentialed and all of that, like not just a random person. So let's figure out a way to get them credentialed.
Council members, I love the discussion, but definitely not part of our budget meeting.
I know.
So I
I know
think we
you're-
should pick it up, but I do, I think it's a great conversation. I think we should pick it up elsewhere, but as far as the budget's concerned, does anyone else have any other questions for the city clerk? Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll move on to the next presentation. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank
Good
you.
job, Jerry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Director Brown?
Present.
Yes. Okay.
Floor is yours, Director.
Wait,
I cannot start the video because the host has stopped it. I tried.
No, I have your presentation.
Jerry has your slides.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can
So
just,
do you
he'll
need me
swipe
to,
through.
so I mean, do you need me to turn my video on or I do?
you don't have to do anything.
Yeah, yes, Jerry will take care of that. Jerry,
No,
can you
I-
allow his
I-
video, please?
No, I get that. I'm just, do you want me to turn my video on?
Yeah,
No,
please.
Michael doesn't want to see your face for some reason.
Because he's at a party. He doesn't
I'm
want
fine with
anyone,
that.
none of our videos get to go on because he's at
Oh,
a party.
You want to see the party? There's a
No, not
huge,
you, Mike. was sorry.
I want to see your party, Chris.
Yeah,
I can't turn on the video.
hold on, if you want, one second.
Jerry.
Yes, I'm gonna make you a co-host and I think
How
that.
about you just do the presentation? We don't-
Uh,
Tiffany, my
Alright.
party's stuck in my car, so it's real exciting. Next time you should
Whoa.
join.
I want to go there.
I'm in City Hall. It's nothing exciting going back here. All right, so
I'm sorry, Carrie. Oh, you're doing it right now, making it full screen for me.
Yes,
Thank you.
all right, so for the record, Chris Brown, Director of Community Development here for the City of Hoboken. And here for the 2023 introduced budget. So Jerry, if you want to go to the next slide. Oh,
1 second,
sure.
put in full screen. Okay,
All right. So this is the number of employees for the city, for the Department of Community Development. We have a total of 14 going into the 2023 year. That's been an increase or the highest number that we've had in the last, I'd say, decade. The reason for that number increasing to the level of 14 versus, previous numbers, we've taken on the Division of Housing, or, the Rent Control Office, which is now within the Division of Housing. We've hired an assistant zoning officer, we've hired an additional planner, and somewhere along within the last 5 or so years, we had transferred in a housing inspector into the zoning office. So, which explains that's to explain the increase in staff. And the next slide. You can go to the next slide.
so wait, Chris, this slide's not an apples to apples. This is different divisions moving into community development.
Correct. So around 2021 to 2022, we created the Division of Housing, and we absorbed in the Department of the Rent Control Office. And I think in 2021, that's when we hired our assistant zoning officer. And I believe that's also when we hired RJR, I think that's when we hired RJ, our additional planner on staff. So it slowly slowly increased up. But the big
What
bump
was-
came with the housing division.
And what was the additional one this year?
So we are looking to hire an additional person in rent control, but we can get to that detail.
That's
a
fine. So
little-
you haven't hired someone else yet?
No, not yet. I mean, we hired somebody in the beginning of the year. But I could get to that. Actually, the next slide will, Jerry, if you can get to the next slide. All right, so you'll see the different divisions within community development. Green is, the green boxes are our, I'll call it planning staff. The orange boxes represent the zoning office, which is made up of our zoning officer. We have a historic preservation secretary, senior housing inspector, and our assistant zoning officer. We have a planning board secretary who manages the boards. And then within that housing division, we have the deputy municipal, we have our department head. And then under her, there's the rent regulation officer, and there's a chief clerk who's currently on administrative leave. And then we also hired, in the beginning of the year, we hired a clerk, a new hire clerk to assist in the zone in the housing division. So that chief clerk has been on administrative leave, I'd say this November, maybe. So October and November. So the last few months before we hired the clerk, and I'm not saying names, obviously, before we hired the clerk, we were basically down to the rent regulation officer and our department head, even though, obviously the organization table didn't change. So in our proposed budget, and we'll get to that in when we get to the budget numbers, we're looking to hire.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
I don't think you're not talking about the person's, like, how they're doing their job. I think, like, I said city clerk Jerry Lore is totally fine. I'm just, because it's kind of hard when at least for me to when you're saying this chief clerk one, it's public
That's
record.
just- Right, that's their civil service title. Like, what do they functionally do?
No, I mean,
Sorry.
saying your name, it doesn't matter. It's a public record. It's not like you're
Yeah.
saying John Doe does a horrible job as. clerk.
No, I'm not, and there's no work quality issue there. I'm just, I'm just saying that there's a clerk that's on administrative leave, and we had to hire we hired an
okay.
addition. Yeah, no, I'm just saying that, we have a clerk that's on administrative leave, and we hired a new clerk to fill in with those duties, and we're looking to hire an additional person because our rent control office has been, I'd say, bursting at the seams with workload. And so in order to increase efficiency, and historically, I believe that our rent control office has functioned with three to four people in that office. So it needs more hands on deck. And we've talked about wanting to, I know Councilman Fisher, you came over, you visited the rent control office a couple months ago, a month ago. I mean,
Yeah.
you've seen the mounds of paperwork that we have in the rent control office, and our initiative of scanning all of those files and just going completely paperless, as Jerry stated in the last presentation. That's one of our objectives. So all this to say, we're at 14 on the organization table. It's probably more like it is 13 people on staff right now. But that's just because one person is on administrative leave.
What does the senior housing inspector do?
So he helps in the zoning office with inspecting parklets, inspecting sidewalk cafes. If there's an inspection for a zoning violation that needs to be looked at, he will go out to a site to report back to the zoning officer. So his job is inspection based.
Why do we call it a housing inspector as opposed to a zoning enforcement officer?
Because that's his civil service title. That's it. That's his. I mean, we could look to change the civil service title, but that's his civil service title. That's. I mean, this is. I'm going by, planning aid is, for example, that's RJ's civil service title. So you can go over to the next slide, Jerry. So this is the responsibilities of the Department of Community Development. We deal with a range of different topics, affordable housing. We manage a community development block grant of about $1 million entitlement a year from HUD. We provide technical support, GIS support to other departments, open space acquisition and development, though we don't, I would say we don't design or maintain parks. We've had a seat at the table with the acquisition and development, loosely development of every open space, every park within the last 13, 14, 15 years, as long as I've been here. As well, we have the zoning office and land use boards. We have a significant workload with redevelopment, and then as discussed, we took on the housing division, which contains the rent leveling and stabilization office. Okay, Jerry, you can go over to the next. So our planning and zoning board. So these are just stats just to show current workload and just showing you where we're at with the boards this year and last year. It's been a busy couple of years. And just to show you also that our planning board, zoning board secretary serves also on the hospital board and the cannabis review board. The 2023 zoning board, the zoning board actually has a backlog of applications this year. So it's going to be, when I'm here next year, if I'm here next year, giving this presentation, that number will probably be pretty significant. So the workload on the boards is not insignificant. It's not declining at all. Jerry, if you want to go to the next slide, we'll show you stats on rent leveling and stabilization. Just to show you the numbers for.
Hi, Jerry. Or sorry, Chris. I mean, is not that I'm advocating for a bunch of additional overhead, but does each one of the boards need their own secretary? Pat right now is a secretary for like all the boards, isn't she? Like, does there someone who assists her, or is she like the sole person?
She's the sole person. Now we should have a backup. Because
yeah.
God forbid anything happens, we need a backup. Absolutely. And that's actually part of my thinking with bringing on another person in the housing division, and possibly helping train somebody with board work. Then actually, I mean, I guess we're here now with rent leveling. Our municipal housing head is going to be the rent board, is going to be the filling rent board secretary for the coming future. So she'll be getting some experience with the boards. When we hire a new person, we may be transferring that responsibility to the new person. And my long-term strategy is hopefully the person that takes that on, if something happens with Pat, we have a stand-in. But this slide just shows you the workload for rent control. We've got sure.
No, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Oh, I apologize.
Can you go back just the one page for a second where you had all the applications? That's one I wanted to see. Yeah, I mean,
it's a lot of meetings.
it's a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
And when I think about the workflow, the bulk of the workflow is the secretary, right? And we get through all of that. So that seems like it's too much for one person.
It's a lot, especially with the night meetings. It's definitely a lot. I mean, we give Pat overtime for these meetings. So that's reflected in the budget as well.
Yeah.
But Pat's very efficient, and I'd say that over the last few years, Pat started, and now I'm just saying names. Pat started scanning files
Good.
a few years ago, and that's really assisted with the efficiency in the department. I started here in 2011, working in the planning office, and Pat started shortly after. When I started working in community development, there were the files in the planning and zoning office was wall to wall. And she did a heroic effort with scanning the files before the pandemic. So when we got into when the pandemic started, she had all of her files remote, and she it's assisted with in case if someone comes in, and before, as Jerry stated, if someone comes in, they need files from City Hall. Jerry stated for a year he was scanning and assisting a developer. That happened all the time, and someone would come in and Pat would have to look for a file, find the file, take out the file, make copies. That time it could be up to an hour. Now it's okay, would you like a file? Let me look on OneDrive. I will send you the file on OneDrive, and that's it. So that the fact that she has all these files digitized, and the fact that our boards are digital, and we don't have people coming into the office anymore asking for paper copies, has made her functions much more efficient. And that's something that we want to replicate with rent control. So just to the next, Jen, did you have a question? Your hand's still raised.
Yes, thank you. But it was on the next page.
All right. Jerry, you want to go to the next page?
Oh, no, I take
Nope.
it back.
No, go back. Jerry, you want to go back a couple slides? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, no, forward. Page 6.
Yeah.
How come you don't have tenant rent calculations? Or is that what oh, there it is. Is that what that?
Yep. Legal
Legal-
rent calculations for tenants. So that increased there was a significant increase last year in post moratorium.
It's a lot.
Yep.
How
Yeah.
come, so when was this prepared? Like what's year to date? Like, why is it only 23? Was this prepared in like January? Or is
It
this
was
prepared?
this is year to date as of yesterday, 2 days ago.
So why would, for example, landlord requests in 2022 be 400 for the year? But after 2.5 months, we only have 23 this year. Do they typically happen like at a certain time of year?
Yeah, it might be because of so typically there's a
They all did it
higher.
last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's the spring, summer, that's when a lot of leases renew. So my guess is that we're probably going to see a lot more activity in the warmer weather.
Got it.
That's my guess.
No offense, but it's not accurate. Love you, Chris, but it's
Which
not.
Which one's not accurate?
That the leases renew more often in the spring.
I'm giving you, I'm just giving
Yeah.
you,
But I'm wondering, do you think this
I
is only,
guess.
maybe they have more that they have to calculate, but this is just what they've calculated
this
year?
is year to date as of
What they've,
this is what they have done as of yesterday.
what they've done, but not necessarily what's been asked.
Right. This is what
Yeah,
has
that's
been,
what I
well, this
think
is,
so.
sure.
Right. That makes more sense because I know that they're overworked and with the recent changes, I know there's a lot of complexities that they're dealing with. That's probably why the number is low.
So far.
Yeah. Yes.
The
I mean,
years-
yeah, I mean, they're overwhelmed. I know they're overwhelmed.
We still have 9 more months for that number to go up. So,
Yeah.
so we can go over to the next slide with our zoning office. So just to show you also a scale with the zoning office, last year we took in about 1,100 applications, historic preservation, took in about 70 applications. Our Historic Preservation Commission functions out of the zoning office. Our zoning officer is also our floodplain administrator. She also handles sidewalk cafe licenses, and also parklets and streetery licenses. So that operates out of our zoning office. And then the next slide, Jerry. So here's our redevelopment projects, our redevelopment plans in preparation. We had a community meeting earlier this week for the Washington Observer Gateway Plan, commonly known as the CVS redevelopment plan. That's being prepared in-house. We also have the Hoboken Housing Authority redevelopment plan, which is being paid for out of our CDBG planning and administration grant. We have one project that is going to be looked at by our Community Development Housing Subcommittee for 307 Newark Street. As well, we have a number of projects that are that have an interim cost and conditional designation agreement, and that are, in some stages, some of these are dormant. I won't go through these point by point, but some of these are dormant. I'm just stating that these have interim cost and conditional designation agreements. And obviously with these agreements, any work that we do on these projects are funded by developer escrow. We also have a number of projects that have signed redevelopment agreements. I have Block 112 and Block 106 with asterisks because obviously those projects are in litigation at the moment. So the next slide, Jerry. This is just a rough overview of director responsibilities. Roughly, I spend about 40% of my time with redevelopment, some less time with CDBG these days. Affordable housing, rent control is 15%, roughly. Administrative matters is 25%, and then zoning matters, I'd say about 10%. So, but this varies. It all depends. Obviously, in January, February, it was probably more on the housing and rent control side than that percentage probably reflects. So our total proposed budget for 2023 is $1.9 million. That's an increase from the 2022 approved budget. It's a 5.7% increase. It's an 8% increase in salary and wages. A decrease of $5,700, or a decrease of 1% decrease in overall operating expenses. That increase, that salary and wage increase, is mostly due to contractual union collective bargaining increases, and we tried to balance it out, or we tried to have some sort of balance with the operating expenses with redevelopment, especially because a lot of the workload with the redevelopment is funded these days through developer escrow. So Jerry, if you want to show the next slide, it'll show the beautiful pie chart. So about 2/3, a little over 2/3 of our budget is salary and wages. The rest of this is operating expenses. Of our operating expenses, redevelopment and affordable housing takes up the largest slice of the pie. We have a redevelopment line item that pays for, obviously, redevelopment, but a lot of our affordable housing contracts also come out of that line item. So this year I'm calling it redevelopment / affordable housing. And you'll see that the other departments, the other divisions within community development have smaller operating expenses relative to our redevelopment line item. Community development and zoning office OE is less than 1%, so it just shows as 0%. And here's just a snapshot of sort of what we're spending on the redevelopment budget. We encumber attorney contracts for affordable housing. We have two general redevelopment, two redevelopment attorneys contracted for 2023. One deals with more sort of general issues, The other one is more focused on the southwest and north end areas. We have a land use attorney this year. We also have, we will be contracting at some point this year for zoning appeals. And then we also have encumbered professional services contracts. The one thing I just realized is that I put in there Jubilee Center LSRP. That's actually a mistake because the Jubilee Center LSRP is being paid out of CDBG funds. So you can actually just, with your imagination, just cross that out.
Chris, are the encumbered attorney contracts, they're in your budget or are they in Brian's budget?
They're in my budget. If they're in general, if it's general litigation, it's Brian's budget. If it's redevelopment, if it's not litigation, I'd say, then it's community development.
And sometimes those are covered by developers and sometimes, or is it always not? It's always us that pays for it.
It depends. So if it's dealing with a redevelopment agreement, if it's to support the advancement of a redevelopment agreement, then it's covered by the developer. If it's to say, talk about the acquisition of property, that's not supported by a developer budget. If it's to talk about the possibility of declaring an area in need of redevelopment versus rehabilitation, that's not covered by it. It's more of a general topic. So we've actually, I'd say over the past few years, our legal fees, I don't have this number. I can't tell you this number off the top of my head because I'd have to look back historically. But when I came into this position, we were always encumbering very large contracts or larger contracts to start, in the $60,000-$70,000 ranges for our redevelopment attorneys. Because we've sort of gotten past a lot of the redevelopment planning stages and we're more in the redevelopment agreement, effectuating those redevelopment plans. That's I think that our general overall city budget attorney contracts have gone down. But that's just my so anticipated expenses this year, like I said, we really want to digitize rent control. We'd like to digitize zoning. Both of those actually came out of we encumbered a contract last year for zoning. We didn't get that far. We encumbered a contract for rent control last year. We didn't get that far just for staffing issues. That came out of redevelopment last year. Hopefully those will come out of the appropriate, especially for rent control, where that's why you'll see on the next slide. We're hoping that comes out of, no, Jerry can go back, not there yet. And then we have the Newark Street Corridor Study. That's an initiative that we've been talking about in subcommittee for the last few years. This idea of studying Newark Street along the southwest and possibly doing streetscape improvements to support additional development on that corridor. So that's something that our department would like to do, and we have some money from a developer to help subsidize that expense, but we don't have enough. We're not there yet in terms of the budget to support the scope, but that is something that we're hoping to kick off this year. And then Jerry, you can go to the next slide. All right, so just really quickly, you'll see that a lot of our items went up with the biggest increase of operating expenses was our housing and rent leveling operating expenses that went up 67%. And that's going to account for a contract with a proposed contract with a vendor to scan about half of our files. That's what we're anticipating, or that's our goal for this year, to scan half of the files in rent control. So that would be about half of that number. And then the other half would be attorney fees, transcriber, and other miscellaneous office supply needs in the office. So that's the big increase this year in our budget. You'll see that community development OE increased $2,500. That's because we have 4 professional planners in our office, and you'll see that we came pretty close to meeting our adopted budget last year. I think I had to actually sort of find some money to subsidize. There's professional development, there's certifications that have to be maintained. And so that's the reason for that increase. Percentage wise, it's large, but overall number, it's a $2,500 more. You'll see that our planning board OE, just looking at our projections where we were the last few years, we reduced the planning board OE $10,000, and we also reduced our redevelopment OE $25,000 for reasons as stated before. And then of course our housing and rent leveling, salary and wage is going up because we are looking to hire an additional person in rent control, while we also have another person that is on administrative leave. So that person's salary is still on our books, but obviously the workload is still there. So we'll have to figure that out in the coming months, but we are hoping to hire an additional person in rent control. So hence the additional budget increase.
Chris, I personally, I'd like to see like another person in rent control, an enforcement officer, the funding for an enforcement officer. My understanding is they don't really have capacity to do the project and convert to digital, handle all of the rent calculations, do a mailing enforcement, and focus on affordable housing. And it seems like they're still down, at least another person. So just a recommendation as we think about what's going to happen between now and the final. If we're really serious about rent control and in this new ordinance, whether it's the original one or the one that's about to be passed, and we want to enforce it, then we should staff accordingly. And I think this message is consistent with the messages we've given over the last couple of years. Is our rent control is significantly understaffed, in affordable housing and rent control. If it's a priority, we should staff it as if it's a priority, not as if it's not. And it feels like it needs one more person at least.
Okay, yeah,
Just my suggestion.
that's appreciated.
And also just on that line, and even if it's not a full person, is hiring some sort of temporary staffing to manage the conversion project, not using the existing team to do it, but actually having getting some temporary, whether they're paralegals, someone that can come in and work on an hourly basis on a contract for a few hours a day, every day for the next few months to get that project done, and not burden our existing staff with having to manage that project.
Yeah, we will. I mean, whatever it takes to get it done. At our current staffing capacity, I don't think that we have the staff to undertake that.
Right. Exactly.
But that's where we're increasing the salary and wage item. So
Okay.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other council members? Not seeing any members of the public?
Manny?
Go ahead, Manny.
Thank you and good evening again, and Director Brown, I appreciate you didn't think you were going to get away. I want to ask a question and other an observation with what Council Member Fisher was just explaining, and hiring a part-time person, or maybe hiring a company that actually does that digitizing. But how about, I mean, I know that there might be sensitive information, but how about offering internships to some type of university or college that have paralegals that need that experience or whatever, maybe that could be something else that could also offset cost maybe. Maybe you have to pay them a stipend for something, but it would be perhaps maybe a cost-effective way to maybe look at it. I don't know if that's something that could be done, because I'm looking at the numbers. And even though this is a very cumbersome department that you run, but you know, it is a lot. So is there any thought on that, sir?
Sure. Yeah. Our head of housing worked for a university, a local university, for years before joining community development staff or joining City of Hoboken staff. So she has reached out to her previous networks to bring in interns to assist with office work, to assist with filing, and that has she has brought in some interns over the last few months. You know, it's just a matter of, can we pay them? It's a matter of, you know, if you're not paying an intern, it might not be a long-term gig, right? So yeah, to answer your question, sure. If there's budget for an intern, if there's budgeting for interns, sure, we'll bring on an intern. If there's budgeting, it's better to bring in, I think, for this type of project, as Councilman Fisher mentioned, you know, it's not a few months thing. I think it's more of a 2-year, 3-year commitment. So probably hiring either temp staff or, you know, having someone at least part-time, I think is the way to go. But I don't think that it could be I don't think it's a free intern situation.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting, I mean, I did suggest it in a way, but I did say a stipend. Of course, you need to incentivize the person to come into our city to be able to pay their lunch or whatever. Of course, you have to give them some type of,
Sure.
meaning. But what I'm trying to
It's
say,
on the table.
yeah, because I'm looking for, I don't work, but in this case, but I'm just trying to see, because I all those agencies that you or boards and commissions that you ticked off, I go to all those meetings and I see how hard they work, and I see how hard people volunteer. And you know, we're looking for ways to save money for our budget here, because people are going to go nuts when they hear the full amount. But in this regard, I also would like to say, again, my opinion, that yes, I believe, and again, I'm here to trying to make you, you know, cut it a little, but as I think Ms. Giantino or Council Member Giantino said, or Ms. Fisher might have said, that it is a lot of work for the secretary of these boards, because she has to be on top of everything. And it would behoove the city to have maybe a junior, again, staffer that can learn from her as the previous one that was there for another thing. Because again, God forbid that she can't make a meeting or two meetings, she would be the one making the schedule anyway, but that she wouldn't be able to make a meeting, that again pushes everything back, you know, and they're already doubling up on monthly meetings, which they usually don't like to do. So maybe we have to find a way to chip away somewhere to put it into staff in these offices, because the planning board, zoning board, and even the rent leveling board, they are going to be very overworked, because especially the rent leveling board. But anyway, that was more a comment than a question. But my only question, would you be asked to go back to the board, the drawing board, which I don't think you will, but would you foresee any way that you can reduce any of these increase?
Any of the
Just a question.
increases in what, salary and wage? Well, a lot of the salary and wages, I mean, the salary and wages that you see that have gone up are contractual. So there's no way to reduce those. And you know, the ones, and there's, you know, some small number of there that's merit based, because, you know, people have, you know, for example, our assistant zoning officer is now a full zoning officer. So you know, she has now the credentials to be a full zoning officer. So you know, you saw the workload that's in the zoning office,
Yeah,
and
of course.
having having our having a backup there is important. And, you know, it could also be that it could also be an idea of where the assistant zoning officer could fill in potentially for the board secretary in some cases. I mean, so having that staffing flexibility is important. So, you know, where I think the big increase comes in is housing and rent leveling. That salary and wage increase. I mean, like I said, it's we have a clerk that's on administrative leave. We've hired a new clerk to help with some of the burden, and we're looking to hire another person to help us advance. So could that be reduced in some way? I mean, sure, but you know, we're not gonna get to where we need to be with a department. This is getting us to, I think, where we need to be. So
Yeah,
but yeah, you know, getting but you know, it might be possible to spread some of that around potentially by, you know, being creative and you know, making it a part-time hire and then bringing in interns. Yeah, that's totally, we're okay with that. We just want to have the salary. We just want to have the budget to even to have those conversations.
yeah, that was that was just the, you know, that was just a question. Should you, would you, could you, and if they asked.
Sure.
My small little question, this would be my exit question, would be, I'm not too clear as to when you allocate funds or when you use funds for affordable housing and redevelopment. It, I know we're not, it might not be what this discussion is, but how does that get allocated? From where does that come in, and what is it dedicated for? Because affordable housing is my pet peeve. Where, how does that get dispersed?
Your question is, how are we spending money on affordable housing? Is that the question?
Yeah, how does, when you get the allocation for, as I saw in the pie chart that said for affordable housing
Mhm.
and redevelopment, what is it dedicated to? Is it to search out how we can get more affordable housing, how we can shrink or make apartments small? Just tell me, how does that work?
Yeah. So Jerry, if you go back one slide. Nope, almost there. Yeah. All right. So if you go back to, if you look at the encumbered professional services contract, we have on there an affordable housing administrative agent and the affordable housing planner. So the affordable housing administrative agent is community grants, planning, and housing. They're our administrative agent, meaning our waiting list is not managed. I don't have the waiting list here on my computer, and that should never happen. That the affordable housing waiting list should not be located in City Hall. It should be with an outside consultant that we that we are under contract with, that manages that. So if you know, if there's a set aside unit that becomes available in a building somewhere in the city, and you know, if you're on the waiting list or someone's on the waiting list, you have a friend on the waiting list, they contact CGP&H and they get that. CGP&H gives them their number, or CGP&H gives them, you know, sort of the estimate of like where they are on the list. They'll contact that person with information on how to renew their registration, or if they're next on the list or coming up on the list, information on, you know, renewing their information so that, you know, they're being pre-approved or they're being screened. So they screen applicants before they refer them to the landlord, who then does the final you know, checks, and they get the person in. But community grants and housing does that screening. So they're our administrative agent. Our affordable housing planner, that's a different matter. So we have right now we've been for the last 5 years doing a declaratory judgment action. So I won't go into this. I'm not going to get into the weeds on this, but I'll just say that sometime this year, we're going to be adopting a housing element and fair share plan. We're going to be, and Manny, you were at the planning board meeting where Kendra gave.
I was.
Yeah. So that work is covered through that affordable housing planner contract. And we will, after everything that Kendra proposed or said at the meeting is approved or sponsored by city council, and we're able to go to the courts, and the courts are able to, give us the stamp of approval to move forward with our home improvement program. We'll be able to do a lot of really great things for residents in the city, low and moderate income residents in the city, in terms of housing rehab, in terms of assisting people with things like security deposits, first month payments if they're coming into a building and they need help, potential, utility help, different ways of assisting low to moderate income and households with housing costs or housing expenses. Not to mention if you're in a unit that needs physical rehab, will help with that. So that's the biggest thing that we've been from a planning standpoint, or when on the redevelopment / affordable housing line, what we're spending money on. So that's, we're planning for the future.
Thank you. Information is king, and I appreciate the information. And if there's other members of the public listening, I would, that goes a long way to keeping the public informed, and that they feel that the monies or the way that this budget works, that this is where it's going from. I was at that meeting, and I appreciate you for remembering and recognizing that. But that is important, and I appreciate the presentation. Again, Director Brown, I appreciate the information, and thank you for the presentation. And Mr. Chair, once again, thank you for allowing me to speak, and everyone present tonight, have a good evening again. Thank you.
Thanks for your questions. Any other
Thanks
questions?
again, Manny. Director, I have just one question. Are there any projects that are coming out of the city's end as far as redevelopment that we don't really anticipate getting to until the end of the year, that may wind up being pushed to the following year in hopes to save any money in your department as far as other expenses?
Probably the Newark Street study. I mean,
Okay,
that's,
and what are we talking as far as dollars are concerned there?
we have a scope of work from a consultant that's in the 200,000 range.
Okay, and just to put it in context, right? That 200,000 range is close to a point on our taxes, right? So that's that could be significant. So if we anticipate that not really happening this year, and then potentially budgeting for it next year, I'd like you to dig into that a little bit more, so that in our further conversations we could kind of explore that, so that we could potentially lower any expenditures this year.
Sure. I mean,
Sorry, Chris, just one, I think it's a good idea. I just don't want to get anyone's expectations up. About $200,000 is about a third of a point.
I mean, and not to, and to that point, no pun intended, because we're talking about points here, but that study would be subsidized. So we have $50,000 from a developer already earmarked for that study. And then once that developer goes through, I don't know that we're gonna, yeah, we have 50,000. I don't know that we're gonna get any additional funds this year. But if we were to, potentially adopt it, it may be that we were able to cobble money from different places to help pay for that. But to your point, yes, this is something that could potentially wait until next year. But the ramifications on that is, we have a project 601-619 Newark, where the alignment of the sidewalk, because it's a wide sidewalk, the alignment of that sidewalk depends on so I think the outcome of that study. As you recall, we were talking about potentially widening Newark Street, or doing other kinds of streetscape improvements, depending on the outcome of public input. So that's the ramification of it, but it's all.
Yeah, and again, Director, it's the same thing I'm going to ask of every director, right? What are the things that we potentially could be putting off to try to save ourselves some money this year, so that we can kind of cobble that stuff together and see what kind of a reduction we might be able to come up with across the board. So, and again, I'm not holding you to any specific numbers here tonight. I just want you to continue to think about it, just like every other director is going to be asked to think about that, so that we could try to get to a number that is a little bit more manageable.
That's fair.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Director. I appreciate it. I'm going to kick this back to Director Freeman. Director, do you have anything before we close?
No, I'm all good. I appreciate the council's time and I appreciate the public's input. Thank you, Chairman.
Great. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate everybody being on tonight and participating.
I'm
Looking
just
forward
sorry,
to
Council, just a reminder, the next one is Monday, March 20th, starting at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Correct. Thank you so much. That's
you.
all I had. So
Nice.
have a-
Jerry,
Yes,
the next council meeting is Monday?
yes.
No, the next budget hearing.
Budget hearings.
No, I meant council meeting.
Yes, it's Monday due to Passover.
April 3rd. Correct.
April
April
3rd.
3rd.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks,
All
everyone.
right.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good night, everyone. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Have a good one.